Well, Steve, I think we're going to break the norm here from the standard steel target paint podcast format. We're not going to do any interviews today. I think it's going to be you and I just going back and forth about a stage. What do you think about that?
Oh, that sounds great, Jeff.
Well, you were talking in one of the last podcasts about how you did an event where you brought a bunch of your guns and everybody got a chance to shoot them, and you were shooting Smoke and Hope. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely correct. It was a great time.
Well, what do you say we break that stage down and give each of our own opinions on how we shoot that stage and our theories? And I'm going to dig into the Steel Target Paint podcast Facebook page. I think we had a question too that maybe we can answer from one of our listeners. What do you think about that?
Oh, that sounds great. I look forward to the discussion because, like anything else, there's always more than one way to skin the cat. By the way, where did that saying come from? Nah,
I
never mind.
yeah, I don't want to know. Tell us a little bit about this event first that you did.
So, Jeff, I was asked by the full-blown firearms group down in Williamson, Georgia, to do a benefit exhibition shoot for a lady named Karen Mafiak. She's running for a state representative in the state of Georgia for that area. What a super, super nice lady. And so what we did is we figured we would do some speed shooting, get people into the sport, whether it's Rimfire Challenge or Steel Challenge, and show them some of the excitement of the game. And so it was a great way to represent the sponsors that I have, as well as the Steel Target Paint shooting team has. Brian Conley with Hunters HD Gold was gracious enough to donate a pair of aviators to the person who shot the quickest time closest to my time in a particular division. And so I think I shot 7 or 8 different divisions and had one guy that came in within, it was just under a second from my fastest time shooting limited. He shot limited, I shot single stack. But no, it was a great time. And Jeff, one of the coolest parts about that entire experience is there's probably 20, 25 kids that really had not done anything close to that before. And I had a couple of parents reach out to me through my Facebook page, my competitor page, just thanking me for the time and effort that I spent with them. And they also cursed me a little bit, Jeff, because I think some kids are going to get some cool Christmas presents from Santa this year. So it was a great time.
If that's the reason why they don't like you, that's a great reason to have. And of course, they're saying that tongue in cheek because, again, anytime we can help our youth understand the importance of gun safety and the fun you can have with guns, but of course in a safe environment, that's fantastic. And I really applaud you for stepping up and bringing out your guns there. And of course, Brian donating another pair of Hunters HD Gold. That's fantastic. What a great program.
All right, so let's talk about Smoke and Hope a little bit. That's one of the common questions I get when somebody's new or even experienced in Steel Challenge. They always want to know how I shoot a stage. And I always kind of tongue-in-cheek say, well, I try to go 1 for 1 and try to do it as fast as possible. And so let's break down Smoke and Hope a little bit. Jeff, what plate order do you shoot Smoke and Hope in?
Well, I like to shoot it 3-4, 1-2 stop. And for a lot of different reasons. One, very quick on that first plate, and actually very quick on the first 2 plates, and you really don't have much of a direction change coming off of that first shot. Now, it does require a very wide swing to plate 1, but it's also one of the closest plates with regards to where you are standing in the box. And then the other big reason I like shooting it that way is that once I'm on plate 1, I am then ripping all the way down to the stop plate. Those last 3 shots real quick. How about you? What's your preferred order?
Before I get into that real quick, Jeff, let's just go through the basics of how we are calling the plates in our numbering system, because not everybody may be familiar with that. And so when we look at an array, it's typically targets left to right, and they're numbered a 1 on the left, leftmost plate, and then it goes up in order to the right, and you don't count the stop plate as a plate. So when you're looking at Smoke and Hope, you have plate 1 and 2. They're the first 2 on your left, and then 3 and 4 are the next ones on your right, and the stop plate is in the middle. How I shoot this stage, Jeff, is I shoot it the way that when I was training with Dave Savigny a couple years ago. He shot it 1, 2, 3, 4 stop, and that's the way that I've been shooting it for the last couple years. And to me, it has always been one of those stages that, well, it's easy to remember. 1, 2, 1, 2, stop. But to your point here a couple moments ago, as I've been shooting new divisions, specifically centerfire divisions, I try to shoot the stages the same way as I do my rimfire from the low ready with my centerfire guns, and it's been a little bit problematic just because I'm a right-handed shooter, and my body feels like it's in an awkward position drawn on plate number 1. I'm getting better at it, but I do think that there's an advantage in some of the top shooters in centerfire are shooting it the exact way that you describe. I think Casey's shooting that way, Dave's shooting it that way, and there's several people that are shooting it 3, 4, 1, 2 stop. And when I was talking with Dave, I think it's been about a year ago at the World Speed Shoot, he said that he changed up his method because of what we're just talking about. It is so much more natural for a right-handed shooter to pull up on that third plate. And so, as we've talked about in the past, if you're comfortable shooting a particular stage order, you're always going to be more successful that way. So that's how I shoot it, Jeff.
Well, you raised a couple of good points there that I want everyone to think about, okay? Dave Savigny, 250 career level 2 major match wins. We were at the match where he hit his 250th at the North Florida Championships. Been shooting for, 20 plus years, and now is seeing that he needs to change his pattern. And I think that tells a lot to say, as you pointed out, don't get married to a way you shoot the stage because there may be a better way to shoot it.
And I think, Jeff, to that point, we talked a little bit on a previous podcast, my training experience with Grant. It's not necessarily a right or a wrong order, but there is the most comfortable order for you. And so you got to be able to take that leap to change your stage order. And that's what I'm going to do with Smoke and Hope now that I've got a home range. Sorry to bring it up again, Jeff. I just had to.
Just a dig, a little dig.
Did you see how I slid that in there?
Awesome.
So it's one of those things that you just can't decide, at least at the level that I compete at, to just change a order of plates overnight. You have to set it up and you have to practice it that way, because when you're in a high stress situation, you go back to a subconscious shooting of what you know, and then you're gonna, or at least I would, look at the third plate, the buzzer will go off, my hand will go down, I'll grab my gun, and then I'll kind of hesitate and turn to plate 1 and shoot. You don't want to be doing that type of thing. And so if you do change an order, you need to set it up and shoot quite a few strings through it, maybe on a couple different days, to at least get reacclimated to the stage order that you want to shoot the targets in.
100% agree. I started switching my order on some of the other stages, and my rule of thumb is don't look at the time. Use the timer just to get a start beep for at least 10 magazines. Just start feeling that new cadence that you're going to be shooting, because it's going to be different more than likely. I used to shoot, when I first started shooting, I shot Smoke and Hope, as you do, left or right. That cadence of when you're hitting the targets is very different than when you shoot it the way I do now, where you've got 2 quick and then you've got to transition over to that 1. Well, your brain, if it's used to hearing a ping, is going to want to pull that trigger. And you have to really be diligent about making sure you're getting the target on the sight. You're not just pulling the trigger in the same cadence you've always pulled. And you mentioned something else that I want to point out, and for those who don't know me, I'm a computer nerd, and I did the math. Every stage has 24 possible ways to shoot it, the way it's set up. 4 plates in any order, 1 plate that's always a last plate. Smoke and Hope actually has the most viable different ways to shoot it because of the way it's configured. I mean, I've seen people go 3-4, 1-2 stop, 4-3, 1-2 stop. You're going 1-2-3-4. There's lefties that may like 4-3-2-1. And of course, so you've got a lot of different options there. And not to bring up another stage, but everybody says that there's one stage that's only one way to shoot it, and that's 5 to go. And I have to disagree because I saw a very good junior shooter at what we call the Nationals, the U.S. Steel shoot, actually shoot it backwards and lay down a 180 on 5 to go in rimfire rifle, shooting it what some would call it backwards. So
All right,
again,
Jeff. Jeff, we're all friends here. Was it Chase Orr?
It was Chase, yes.
Man, I've seen him shoot it that way, and he is blazing fast.
Yep. And so, again, don't get stuck in a rut married to a way you shoot it. I mean, if that tip is the one thing you take away from here, find the pattern that's working for you now, but don't get married to it because little story from the Worlds. I was lucky enough. I was working the practice range. Max Michel came up there, got to talk with him a little bit, watched him shooting roundabout. And for years, most of the top shooters shot roundabout straight across. 1, 2, 3, 4, stop. Well, he started shooting it in practice 4, 3, 1, 2, stop. And I said, wow, Max, I've never seen you shoot it that way. He's like, yeah, I've been working on this for 3 years and brought it out last year. And I said, well, it looks pretty fast. Why didn't you bring it out earlier? He goes, well, I didn't want to come out with something new and then screw up in a match or anything like that, And so, the pros have the exact same hangups we do. And
Sure.
And you hit it perfectly. Take some strings, get it in practice, Let's face it, right after Area 6, for major matches, I think we've got Alabama, and are there many more after that?
Well, in the Steel Challenge world, we've got North Carolina State Steel Challenge matches out there, and the Tennessee State Steel Challenge match, as well as Alabama. So those are the last couple that are on my schedule after Area 6.
So, and then it picks up again, maybe Georgia in February?
Yeah, so talking with Glenn Weber a couple weeks ago, he's actually moving that match because it coincidentally falls on Super Bowl weekend. He is going to move that to the first week of March. And so
a little warmer.
Yeah, my frozen fingers are thanking him already because those of you who have never shot that match, I think I've shot it the last 3 or 4 years in a row. It seems like every morning it's 28 degrees, and then it may end up being a balmy 55 in the afternoon. But it's a pretty cold match.
All I know is that everybody was telling me, take half your hand warmers and put it in with your ammo. And keep your ammo warm as well.
Absolutely. So, Jeff, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt and discussion out on Facebook. Cole Bush posted a video of him running Smoking Hope in 1.17 seconds. Do you recall the fastest time you've ever shot that stage in a match?
I do. In a match, my fastest time is a flat 160. And that was with rimfire rifle.
Oh, is that right? That's cool.
Yep.
That's
How about yourself?
So it's interesting. At the exhibition shoot this past weekend, I threw down a 140, a 141, a 142, and a 145, both with my rimfire rifle open, my rimfire rifle iron. And, it's not in competition. My second string that I shot with my PCC was a 152, so I was feeling pretty good about that. But in terms of a competition, the fastest I've ever shot Smoking Hope was about 2 years ago at the Griffin Gun Club local match. I shot rimfire pistol iron, and it was a blind squirrel run. I shot a 1.31 seconds, and so that's the fastest string that I've ever shot on any stage in a match.
Did you turn to the RO and go, I got them all right?
Yeah, there was a little bit of hooting and hollering on the stage. So yeah, it was good. It was one of those that, the RO had a cadence to it. So I was either going to hit it or it was going to be a procedural, and I was right on it. So
well,
I've had a couple when it's a fifth string and a throwaway, and try to judge the timer, and it hasn't worked out for me. But that's been my best string that I've ever shot in a match.
Well, I may have said this on the podcast before, but I'll relate this story again. And it was at the Griffin match last year, this year in February, and you and I were squatted together, and Smoking Hope was set up out the back of an old general store. So I walked up there and I laid down 4 really good runs. I think my total time was a 695 uh, for the 4 strings.
I know where you're going with this.
And I looked at you and I said, "Are you going to say it?" And you said, "Watch this." And I said, "Hold my beer." And and I ripped off a 138. Problem was I had 3 misses. And you looked at me and went, "That might have been a little fast."
Hey, but did you see those splits?
Oh, man. But again, there you go. That's a perfect example of you've still got to hit the plates, you know. Um, and people always ask me, what's the fastest anybody's ever going to shoot that stage? And I said, well, here's what I can tell you. I said, whoever can pull their trigger 5 times off of a beep into a berm, that's the theoretical maximum or minimum that you're going to shoot that stage, because you have to pull the trigger 5 times.
Right.
So, if you can only pull the trigger 5 times in 1.5 seconds, don't try to beat 1.5 seconds in smoke and hope. You can't do it, because you've still got transitions and you've still got sight alignments. And I hear people all the time, "Oh, I never saw the dot on the first 4 plates." Well, I hope you're picking it up by plate 4, because the only way you're going to get a good time is if you can see it by the time you hit plate 5. Of course,
Right.
unless you're doing that blind squirrel run.
Well, and to that point around how fast can somebody shoot it, there's I forgot who posed the question out on the Facebook group Rimfire Race Guns. You think anybody will ever break a second? And my opinion is that nobody will ever break a second. I think there's going to be some fast people out there. You've got Ethan, Cole, Chase, Grant. There's just a great group of young shooters out there that seem to be just blazing fast. And I don't think theoretically they can transition the gun that quick and still have a proper start and connect on all 5 plates. And I would say in a match, I'm not even sure if you could do it messing around, even if you could time the buzzer. But, because I was looking at it this past weekend as some of that discussion was unfolding, and some of my fastest times from the low ready to that first plate, and again, I'm shooting plate 1, I shot it in .29, and that is absolutely the fastest I could do. Most of mine were in the .31, .32, that area, and so you would have to get on that first plate in the .2 range or .25 range, and your splits would have to be in the, .20 range to.
Well, yeah,
to
I mean,
really...
if you're up in .20 and you still have 4 transitions, so you're doing 5 transitions. Basically your first shot .2 to plate 1, another .2 to plate 2, and think about this: you're talking .2 from 1 to 2, but now you're talking .2 from 2 to 3, which is twice the distance. Okay, then you got another .2 to plate 4, and then a .2 back to the beginning of the stage, or back to the center of the stage for the stop plate. So
I just wrote it down on paper because I'm a visual guy. the first shot, if it's .25, which I think that is blazing fast. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but that's really quick. And then .2 transitions after that on 5 plates. That's 1.05 seconds. So, all right, I'm gonna throw a challenge out there. If somebody with video evidence can show me that they can break 1 second, even if you do time the timer, I will give you a $10,000 gas card. But if I'm out of those, I'll give you a Steel Foster Shooting.com sticker. So if
well,
you
know
can
what?
do
I'm
that,
going to add to that, Steve. I'm going to
go ahead.
The proof has to be the 5 splits. Don't just show the time. Okay.
Sure.
All of these timers that are out there have a way of showing you the splits. The older ones you have to cycle through, but the newer ones, you can hit a button and it'll show you what the different splits were for each shot. And that's really what's going to validate it. And I really wish a lot more people would do that, not because I don't believe these people are making those times. I truly do. I truly hope they're getting all 5 shots. But I would love to see what their first shot time was and what their transitions were, because then it's something to strive for. I'm usually up in about point 0.3, 0.35 to the plate that I'm coming up on and Smoke and Hope, which is 3. Clearly a lesser transition than what you're doing on 1. So to me, that says, okay, if I got to step up my game and continue to compete at the upper levels, I've got to get better at hearing that beep and getting out of the gate fast. I should be able to draw. I mean, theoretically, even if you were drawing on plate 3, it should be faster than you go into plate 1. It's just less of a transition. Would that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say the reason why I threw the .25 out there is I've had the fortunate opportunity to shoot with a lot of great shooters across the country, and probably the fastest shooter to get on a plate, a large plate like that, is John Nagel. We were up to his ranch practicing. It's probably a year ago, and we were practicing accelerator, and he was right on the low ready, and I was doing the "Are you ready? Stand by," and I was varying up how I was, the time, the 1 to 3 seconds, and I think John's fastest time was .24 on plate number 2 on accelerator, which
Wow.
I just, I asked him, hey, John, are you a robot or what's going on? And he just, I don't know what it is, man. He can get on that so fast. And when he's shooting Smoke and Hope, I've seen John lay down some high 1-2s and 1-3s pretty consistently. But that's cooking, man. That's really cooking. At
Well,
least with our
go
at
ahead.
least with our current technology, it's cooking. There may be some sort of advancement that will happen, 20 years from now, that 1 second may not be a big deal. But until then, okay. So you said the video evidence with the splits. I'll even throw in a customized hat. And I haven't had them made up yet, but I'm going to make some up so you'll get a nice sticker with a really nice hat.
Awesome. Well, Steve, we've had a question on the podcast Facebook page. And so I'm going to read it off and then we'll answer it. And this comes from John Holbrook. And he says, I'm not particularly good at Steel Challenge, B class and carry optics, A class and PCC optics. I don't have the ability to set up Steel Challenge stages at my local range for practice. For someone in my situation, what do you recommend for both dry fire and live fire practice to improve? So Steve, how would you answer that question?
Wow, to me, that question, I know John, he's a great guy, but it does kind of fall into how do you solve world hunger, Jeff? It, there's a lot that goes into that. If you're a B or A class shooter, on becoming a grandmaster shooter, if that's your goal. I know his intent isn't around necessarily being a grandmaster shooter tomorrow on What's All the Secrets. I will share that with me, one of the best things that I did to improve my game, certainly there's some dry firing that's involved, mainly the transition of dry fire, that I'm able to look at the first target, not look at the gun, get at the low ready, and bring the gun up to my eyes, which is right on the first target. And also to that point that, if I'm on roundabout as an example, I can line up the sight on the target, bring it to the low ready, close my eyes, the timer will go off, and I'll pull the gun up and it'll be dead center on the target. And so I think based on your skill level, that's one thing that will take a significant amount of time off of your game. But in order to continue to progress, one of the best things I ever did, Jeff, was I bought a timer. I bought a practice set, Steel Challenge set from Carl at GT Targets, fantastic guy, and I got a range membership. And what I would do is I would set up one stage and I would shoot the heck out of it, and then I would set up another stage, shoot the heck out of it, but I would track my progress on the stages that I shot. Without getting into too much detail, because there's probably, we could break this up into a 10-hour podcast alone in training session. I just released kind of what prompted this was John's question out on out on Facebook to do some self-analysis of where you're at, where you want to be. So I just released a blog post out on my competitor website, which is stevefostershooting.com, and it talks through my trials and tribulations of the world of single stack. You know, we talked a little bit about it that I'm a 6th Division Grandmaster as well as yourself, and I've expanded to centerfire, and so I'm kind of going through the same process I did 2 years ago with PCC and rimfire pistol open, rimfire pistol iron, and then I'm reusing some of the techniques and strategies that I used back then to become a better shooter. But it does take time, and in order to be a better shooter, you have to get out the range and pull the trigger. There's some people out there that say in USPSA, 3-gun and whatnot, they can get extremely, see a lot of improvement from dry fire, from mag changes, as well as drawn from a holster. I'm with you. Maybe a little transition work, but it just goes out the window once you have the recoil sensation. There's the sound, there's the feeling, and that type of stuff. Get a set of steel, get a timer, find a club that's close to you, or you know what else you can do, Jeff? You can sell your house and buy a new house.
Buy a range.
Put in your own range. So,
well, Steve, I would say I would agree with you 100%. I will add this. When I first started, I shot rimfire pistol open exclusively for 15 months. I focused on a gun,
Sure.
and I focused on, at the time, was the gun that was you had the fastest peak times, because I wanted to go fast, and I said, this is fun, and I got a victory, and put a dot on it, and went out there, and I focused on that. And when I couldn't get to the range, the outdoor range, to actually shoot steel, I took a slightly different approach. I had a membership to an indoor range, and they went to 20 yards. And most indoor ranges don't allow you to draw from a holster, but they have no problem with a low ready start.
Sure.
So I got a timer, and I got to know them on the range, and they have 6 bays in each area, and it's 3 different areas, doors in between. And I'd always try to get on an area that maybe there weren't a whole lot of people down there, so I could hear the timer, and the timer would only pick up my shots. And I would do those low ready first shot drills on a paper plate at 7 yards or at 10 yards or at 15 yards to simulate the different plates that I may be shooting. Because if you can hit a paper plate at 7 yards, you can hit an 18 by 24 inch plate at 7 yards. So I would do that, and I did that. But what focusing on a single gun and getting to grandmaster level at that gun did for me was I learned how to go fast. I learned how to shoot the stages fast. And then I applied it to the different guns that I picked up after that. So picked up a rifle and said, okay, this is a little different, but the concepts are the same. I still got to get out to the plates fast. Still got to shoot all the plates, and took to that. And then PCC, and then I went to iron sights, which thank God I put those away.
Not for the faint of heart, right?
Well, I take that back. I enjoy shooting the rimfire rifle iron and the PCC iron sight because I'm shooting with a ghost ring, and much more enjoyable shooting those than shooting an iron sight pistol.
Right.
But yeah, so again, it's wonderful to be able to go to a match. I know you came down to our match, shot 6 guns. I've shot up to 6 guns in a match. It's wonderful to be able to shoot all those guns, and I hear people, I need to maximize my time at the range or at a match and get the most out of it. I'm traveling all these hours and all this kind of stuff. And I said, that's great. And if that's what you want to do, fantastic. Don't complain about your performance if you don't have a good match, because that's a lot of guns to shoot, and you have to be on the top of your game in all of those guns to be able to compete effectively in all of those. And for everybody that's out there that's shooting 6 guns, you know who I'm talking to.
You're exactly right, Jeff. There's a level of physical conditioning involved, especially if it's hot out. But even some of us are shooting some of these big heavy guns. But it's also more importantly in my book the mental preparation that goes into it, because
Agreed.
after some of these long days and it's 98 degrees in the shade and you've been there, because they're not using 10-person squads, so they're using 15-person squads. You're out on the range for 12 and a half hours. That does have an impact on your performance, and people that have trained in for those types of conditions, you can definitely see their performance reflecting in how they train. So, but yeah, John, that's a great question, and that's my intent is, through the blogs as well as what Jeff and I are talking about here on the podcast, is to continue to help uh, get you some information, get you some feedback in terms of what we've done to train. But I think there's a lot of it that's a ton of detail um, that will be released in some of our podcasts as well as blog posts, and that's why we try to give some shooter tips. There's some great tips that have been offered. They're little segments, and that's why we're doing this podcast today, to talk about Smoke and Hope. Jeff, I do have a question back to Smoke and Hope, because I get this question. I actually asked this question of some of the top shooters in Smoke and Hope. When you're shooting Smoke and Hope, are you just point shooting, or are you, meaning indexing on a target and pulling the trigger? Or are you seeing the sight the entire way? How does it work for you?
Well, for me, I have to admit, I don't see the target. I don't see the dot on the target or the sight on the target on my first shot. Um, again, where I stand in the box, how I've got my feet positioned, it's a very natural raise the gun, and I'm going up on that plate 3. But when I'm pulling the trigger, right after I pull the trigger or right about the time I pull the trigger, I've got the sight. You shoot an open gun, classic story, everybody says, can't find your dot, pull the trigger. There's your dot. And it's the same kind of thing where I'm trying to come up so fast and basically index that gun on the first plate, but I'm hoping to pick up that sight after the first plate. And then on every other plate, I've got a friend at Frostproof who shoots out of Frostproof, Dwayne Collins. And Dwayne said, when you see your sights with a white background, pull the trigger.
Sure.
And so what you're really seeing is the edge transition of the sight making the next plate, pull the trigger, and transition off. And that doesn't mean I don't miss, and we all miss. Anybody who says they don't miss is lying. And anybody who says they don't miss and they truly aren't missing, they're going too slow.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're exactly right.
But yeah, I tend to pick it up after the first plate, but I have to admit that I rarely see the dot on the first plate. How about yourself?
So it's interesting, because I've tried both methods, and to me the difference is negligible in time. Typically what I'll do, and I'll talk about single stack here for a second, I'm drawing the gun, bringing the gun up, my eyes are already on the target. As soon as I see the red of my fiber optic on that sight, or I'm sorry, my fiber optic on the white, I'm squeezing the trigger and I'm moving, and then the second plate, I'm just borderline point shooting the second plate, and then I'm making sure on the third plate that I'm seeing just a little bit of my fiber optic on the white. Same thing with plate 4. And then when I'm coming into the stop plate, you should see me, Jeff. I've got my hand up like I'm shooting. I'm shooting the stop plate, but that's definitely the number one plate that I have a tendency to miss. If I try to point shoot or anything like that, once in a while I get lucky, but I'm seeing the plate, I'm seeing the front sight, and then I'm pulling the trigger. What I do have to be careful of, because I've shot other variations of guns over the years, and I haven't shot a 1911 as much. The grip angle is a little bit different, and so I end up leaving the front sight just a tad high. I mean, we're talking just 1/8 of an inch too high, and I prairie dog it just a tad. But I think that the front sight's in the rear notch, and my wrist is not cocked forward as much as it needs to be. And so if I do miss a stop plate, it's just over the top, and that's a great reminder for me to make sure that I've got my index and make sure the fiber is right on the target.
Absolutely.
But I did some testing last weekend, and I did with my rimfire rifle open. I took the I don't know what's one of those first person or third person shooter games that you see kids play. I'm drawing a blank.
Oh,
I'm
like
like,
Doom or Call of Duty, those kind of
yeah,
things?
Call of Duty. Thank you. Yeah, my PlayStation 4, where you see the sight and then you see the zombie or the person or whatever. So it's really more sight focus, and then you see the target, sight focus, in your eyes don't snap to the target. I tried that last week, and I was getting the same times as what I just described to you. So I don't think that there's really that big of a difference. But for me, my tendency, and I talk a little bit about the blog post that I just posted, is that I move my eyes before I squeeze the trigger, and that's how I miss plates.
Yep. Yep. I can see that. I mean, and that is a classic one. And I've talked to a number of people, and they say, well, I don't stop. My gun never stops when I'm shooting a stage. And I went, you miss a lot then, don't you? I believe, and I know this is how I shoot, is the key to this game is learning how to stop and then start very, very fast. We talk about blind squirrel runs, and yeah, those are the ones where maybe the gun's not stopping, but the consistency isn't there. Me personally, I'm stopping on every plate. Now I'm stopping, again, very, very fast. But I still think that if you're I mean, there are a few plates you can drive by, but in general, I'm stopping on every plate. How about yourself?
Yeah, I would say that's true. The one that when you say drive by, it's plate number 2 on accelerator.
Oh yeah,
That's
oh
my
yeah.
drive by plate. But it's one of those that it's
Well, I tell
people all the
people
time. It's easy to miss an 18 by 24 inch plate. If you don't believe me, watch.
if you're coming up to plate 1 in say second gear, and you're accelerating to plate 2 in third gear, you're downshifting to first.
Yeah.
So you're still moving, but
Yeah.
you aren't, it's not just a wing and a prayer. Yes, I agree. It's a drive-by, but it's a slow drive-by.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Well, listen, I would like everyone out there in the community that's listening, again, thank you so much for the support. We really appreciate it. Keep those questions coming in on the Steel Target Paint Podcast Facebook page. That's how we know we're giving you back what you want to hear. And hopefully we'll get another question. Again, John, thanks for yours. And anyone else, give a question out there. And again, Steve and I are going to mix these kinds of podcasts in there where we pick a stage and we just give you our theories and dissect it and how we shoot it. And hopefully that may help you get to the next level, or maybe even get you to that Grandmaster level.
All right, Jeff. Well, another good one. And remember, there's a lot of great items out on rangestore.net, and they're adding items daily. Use code STPodcast10 for 10% off.
All right, Steve. Well, have a good week until we talk next time. Don't forget, one shot, one steel.